What's your most disgusting childhood story? I didn't wash under my foreskin for 15 years. This happened when I was in 9th grade. I grew up not knowing anything about my weenie or how to clean it. My parents never taught me anything about genitals. I never asked, I only knew where the pee came out. So one day in 9th grade biology, our teacher covered the male reproductive system. She reached a point where she mentioned that for uncircumcised males, the foreskin is supposed to retract over the head of the rod. I was pretty shocked because that's certainly not how mine worked. By that time, I was a daily meat beater, and my foreskin could barely go back enough for me to see the entrance of the urethra. So armed with my new knowledge about how my weenie was supposed to work, I went home, and a few Google searches led me to discover that I had a severe phimosis. So being the young buck I am, I also Googled how to fix it. There were two options, either tell my parents and have them take me to a doctor for surgery or do stretching exercises. Not wanting to tell any of this to my parents or have someone come near my willy with a scalpel, I opted for the latter option. I got some baby oil, the only lube available at the time besides my mom's bottle of expensive olive oil, and went to work. After about 4 hours of stretching, I finally made some progress. I could see a slightly bigger area now, not just the opening of my pee hole like before. Everything was going great except for one thing. The underside of my foreskin was releasing one of the most pungent cheese smells I had ever encountered. It was the most disgusting thing I've smelled even to this day. It finally hit me. My weenie had not been cleaned my entire life up until that point. Over the next couple days, I kept stretching. Once I was able to see more surface area of my willy, I discovered this thick, gooey, greenish-brown sludge, leaking from under my foreskin. After some quick research, I learned that this was smegma, also known as cheese. I cleaned it off whenever it seeped out during my stretching exercises. As much as it disgusted me, everything was still going fine. That was about to change. So this was about 10 days into my stretching, and I'd gotten my foreskin about to the halfway mark. I was getting very excited to finally have a normal full, functioning weenie. Unfortunately, I got impatient and decided to force it back. That day, I lubed it up and went to work. I pulled it back as far as it would go and pulled it some more. I pulled till I couldn't take the pain anymore. I repeated this process for almost 3 hours. I somehow managed to get my foreskin to the point that my whole willy was showing. However, I still had more work to do. Despite the pain, I gave it one big pull and felt the foreskin pop all the way over the head. The pain was excruciating. I opened my eyes, and my heart skipped a beat. The entire lower half of the head of my rod, down to the area behind it, was caked with thick sticky cheese. It was now mixing with the blood that seemed out of where I tore the top part of my foreskin when I yanked it over the head. I completely freaked out and tried to squeeze it to stop the bleeding. Unfortunately for me, it only worsened the pain. When the bleeding stopped, I had to chip away at the smegma caked onto my weenie. After 2 hours of scrubbing, I managed to get it all off. I was finally done, but I was in severe pain. I tried rolling it back over the head, but it wouldn't budge, so I left it. I completely ignored that forcing the foreskin back would constrict all the blood flow to the head. My willy looked like it had been through a war. I went to bed, and went to school the next day in severe pain. I tried to act like everything was fine. I was still in major pain when I got home, so I decided to check on it. I undressed in the shower and looked down at it. The first thing I saw was the blisters. 2 huge pus-filled blisters, one on the right side and the other on the bottom of the head. The next thing I noticed was that my weenie was turning pale. I am a black guy, and I realized that if I didn't get my foreskin back over my head, I'd be in serious trouble. I lubed up again and began forcing my foreskin back over the head. This was extremely difficult because of the 2 massive blisters in the way. I kept trying to force it back over and put too much pressure on one of the blisters. It broke. Pus leaked out all over my weenie and fingers. My willy was on fire at this point and I was holding back tears. Still, I kept pushing until the skin went back over my head. Judging from the extra fluid that leaked out afterward, the other blister popped as well. Once again, I left it and went to bed. I checked 3 days later and my meat returned to its original color. I rolled back the foreskin to clean where the blisters were, and in 3 weeks I was back to normal. My foreskin is still tight, but hey, at least it's clean.